for fornication. Well, that's the picture that Daniel gives us. But we're given a little bit more detail as sort of the career of this beast. Where has it come from? What exactly is it? We see there's parts there that take us back to those other ones, that seven heads and the 10 horns and the scarlet color, the connection that goes through there. But it tells us as well that when we look at this in verse 8, this is a beast which you saw, and it was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell upon the earth shall wonder, whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. So this is a notable characteristic, is that this is a resurrection of something that was here already, and has now come back. So when we're looking at this, it makes perfect sense when we look at the whole line of Daniel's image, and we see basically at Daniel chapter 7 is just all the phases in Revelation, all the beasts that are there. It's the same thing going through different phases. The words in Revelation 17 verse 8 tell us the same thing. This is the resurrection of a previous system that was already there. Now, what is interesting is when you look at this in Revelation, or in the book of Revelation, and you say, okay, well, have we seen a resurrection of this system? We find, of course, that the first Reich, or the Holy Roman Empire, because that's what Reich was followed after its demise by a second German Reich. And that, of course, was under the command of a man named Wilhelm, Kaiser Wilhelm, Kaiser meaning Caesar, Wilhelm II, who made an attempt at resurrecting this beast. And that, of course, led up into the First World War. And that war, of course, was his ambitious goal to bring Europe back into one, and himself being, of course, the Kaiser, the Caesar, or the ruler over it. Now, of course, his ambition ended when Germany lost, at a cost of some 37 million lives. So not exactly a small undertaking, but certainly one that had a terrible effect on the people they were there. This, of course, though, was followed by sort of phase 2, which is almost just a continuation of the same. When the Second World War broke out, when a man named Adolf Hitler came to power, the leader of the Nazi Party in Germany, and his goal, of course, was to try and resurrect it. This is a poster, Das Neue Europa, you can see on the bottom of the screen there, the New Europe. This is what they were trying to grow in this whole place. Well, 85 million deaths, they figure, 60 to 85, they're not really sure, it's really hard to count once you get to that kind of numbers, were triggered during this period of time. And of course, amongst those are 6 million Jews who were targeted for destruction in the Holocaust. Well, his designs didn't last very long. His New Europe was to collapse, and it was the end of his 1,000-year Reich that didn't quite go 1,000 years, only a decade or so. And it would be, of course, in 1945 that Berlin was taken by the Allied forces. In fact, it was taken by the Soviets. And the Allies had a victory over this whole situation. And they carved up what was left of Germany amongst them. And Berlin itself was carved up between them. The borders began to close down between the different occupying forces very quickly. The friendliness wore off. And the Soviets became hostile and encircled their share of the territory. Winston Churchill described the situation in his famous speech while visiting the United States.
From Stettin in the Baltic to Trieste in the Adriatic, an iron curtain has descended across the continent. Behind that line lie all the capitals of the ancient states of Central and Eastern Europe. Warsaw, Berlin, Prague, Vienna, Budapest, Belgrade, Bucharest, and Sofia. All these famous cities and the populations around them lie in what I must call the Soviet sphere. Whatever conclusions may be drawn from these facts, in fact they are, this is certainly not the liberated Europe we thought to build up, nor is it one which contains the essentials of permanent peace.
So Churchill warned against Britain becoming involved in the European coal and steel community, the precursor to the European Union. He advocated Britain's place belonging to the Commonwealth. But you see, they wanted to control what was going on in Europe. They didn't want anybody being in charge anymore of coal or steel. And so the EC was begun. But while this was all going on, in 1960, 15 years after the posturing had begun, the Soviets decided to build the Berlin Wall and close off Eastern Germany from Western Germany. And the Cold War was in full swing and would last for more than 40 years. But the thing is, brothers and sisters, it's not really the picture that is painted for us in the Bible. The Scriptures paint an entirely different picture about the geopolitical spheres in the time of the end. What we see in the book of in the book of Ezekiel and Daniel, chapter 11, is a confederacy, a north and a south. Gog, who Daniel calls the king of the north, comprised of Rosh, Meshach, and Tubal, allied to Magog, which of course is the area of Europe, the house of Togarmah, Gomer and all his bands, Persia, Libya, Ethiopia, all of these countries comprising a group of nations that would eventually come against Israel. It is opposed in the southern confederacy by trading nations such as Sheba and Dedan, and a place, of course, that was called Tarshish, and its merchants, which we believe to be Britain and the young lions being United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and so on. Not our subject, brothers and sisters, but just consider what was going on in Europe. That's the picture the Bible paints. It's not the situation that was there at the end of the Cold War, because Europe was divided along two lines. There was the Warsaw Pact set of countries. These were the ones that were really what we would call Eastern Europe today, running between the area of the River Don and the River Danube, and then Russia itself. And it developed from the 1940s and was right the way through to the late 1980s. Well, it was counterbalanced on the other side of things by the countries of the NATO alliance. A counterbalance which was put in place, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, to hold the Russians at bay, and divided Europe right the way down the middle, right the way through Germany. And brothers and sisters, when you look at that, that was the situation that I can remember growing up with as a young man going to school, and we learned about this in our history classes. But the Bible had painted a different picture. And so it was that some of our brethren used the prophetic scriptures as their guide. Not just the news, not just the headlines, but they said, if this is what the Bible says, then we can expect a change to take place in Europe. One of these brethren is our brother Graham Pierce, who wrote a book called Russia, the Vatican, and the Invasion of Israel. And it was written in 1970. Just listen to what he had to say. What we could reasonably then expect is a general, larger-scale reorientation of strategic positions, Britain and the U.S. reestablishing themselves in the Near East. This would bring into being the two great power blocks as the King of the North and the King of the South. This would include cooperation with Israel and possibly an occupation of Egypt again. At this time, too, relations between Israel and the Arabs may be changing. So he looked for a reorientation that would have to take place. And of course, that's what did happen. It was during my last year of high school. The whole world was turned upside down. We were told when we were doing our history exam, do not look at what's going on in the world right now. Forget the last sort of year and just focus on what was going on sort of 1987 and before that. So in November, the Berlin Wall came down, clearing the way for Germany to unite, clearing the way for a greater development of the European Union. And brothers and sisters and friends, it's this month that Germany celebrated 25 years of the Berlin Wall coming down. Gorbachev was there on hand, gave a speech about the terrible disillusion of the dismemberment of the Soviet Union. Well, while that was going on, sort of 24 years ago, a year after this, what had been taking place is that the power vacuum that was created in the world destabilized things. And so you had the Gulf War that was going on. It began in 1990 and lasted through to 1991. Again, remember, the scriptures talk about a realignment of the nations. Daniel chapter 11 and Ezekiel 38 have a different picture than what was there at this point in time. With the collapse of the Warsaw Pact, the vacuum that it created caused instability, especially in the area of the Middle East. And so it was that Saddam Hussein decided to move in and to take Kuwait, sparking that Gulf War. Well, as the NATO forces were being drawn down out of Europe, Canada moving jets out, and they were coming back home, what ended up happening, a lot of them were rerouted down into the south because there was this war going on in the Middle East. So a lot of the forces that were in Europe were then moved into the area of the south. And since then, we've seen a drawdown of the NATO forces in Europe and a build-up of the military power in the south, which is described in Daniel chapter 11 as that king of the south. And of course, what we're also seeing develop is a rising king of the north. And that's another subject perhaps for Brother Ken to talk about. So this is all going on, brothers and sisters. Huge geopolitical shifts that have opened up the area for Europe, no longer divided the way it was, so that it could grow into the position described for it in the Bible. With America and NATO losing its teeth and busy elsewhere, really, another project had been preparing for quite some time in Europe. Remember the words of Revelation chapter 17 and verse 12. We read here, "The 10 horns which thou saw are 10 kings which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast." Now, that's the description that's given to us. Notice there's a difference, though, between this and the Christian Roman Empire. The Christian Roman Empire had crowns upon its horns. This does not have crowns upon its horns. They have no kingdom as yet. But they're going to receive power as kings for 1 hour when they join the beast. Now just consider these two words. These will have one mind and will give their power and strength to the beast. Revelation chapter 17 and verse 13. They're going to cede that power voluntarily. Well, the word power is the idea in Strong's of the influence of wealth arising from numbers, resting on armies or forces. This is sort of the one side of it, the huge power of wealth. So that's the monetary side, and also armies and forces. The word strength is a little bit different. It's the idea of the power of choice, of liberty, rule of government, the power over judicial decisions, the authority to manage one's own domestic affairs. These are the two things that the nations of Europe would voluntarily give up so that they could have power as kings, because they don't have crowns at the beginning of the situation. Well, it was in 1957, of course, that the European Treaty was signed. It was out of the ashes of the Cold Wars of the two World Wars, that an effort was made to regulate coal and steel in Europe so that no one nation could dominate anymore. The first treaty was signed in 1950 in Paris, and the treaty creating the European Economic Community was signed in 1957, and of all places, the Capitoline Hill in Rome, one of Rome's 7 hills. And the world has been seeing the EU as a revival of the Holy Roman Empire, the beast that was and is not and yet is. This is Citigroup's Wilhelm Buter. He says, as a blend of national and supranational, the EU resembles the Holy Roman Empire, which united Central Europe from the 10th century until Luther. Technically, he says about till 1806. So the president this Citigroup individual here is pointing out that what they see, this is a secular man from the world involved in the politics and finance of Europe, they see Europe as being a successor to that Holy Roman Empire. And the president of the EU certainly sees the European Union as an empire created by nations freely giving up their sovereignty. This is Manuel Barroso.
Sometimes I like to compare the European Union as a creation to the organization of empires.